The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between star systems, a massive sphere of crystal and metal where representatives from 47 spacefaring species gathered to decide the fate of worlds. On this particular day, they had gathered to discuss a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. Ambassador Gethron of the Sithrini hegemony stood at the center of the chamber. His tall, slender body was covered in smooth gray skin, and his four eyes blinked in sequence as he activated the holographic display. Images of Earth appeared before the assembled representatives, showing cities, vehicles, and the strange, soft creatures that called themselves humans. Distinguished members of the Concord, Cuthvorin began, his voice carrying easily through the translation systems. I present to you our latest discovery. A primitive world in the outer spiral arm. The dominant species has achieved basic space travel, but they have not yet left their own star system. They possess no faster-than-light capability, no planetary shields, and no unified government. They still fight wars among themselves over resources and territory. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Vrix delegation, insectoid beings with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, made sounds of amusement. The Cassari, massive reptilian creatures adapted for underwater life, showed their teeth in what passed for smiles among their kind. Even the crystalline Morith, beings of living mineral who rarely showed emotion, seemed to pulse with contempt. They call their world Earth, Cuthvorin continued, and they call themselves humanity. Our scouts have observed them for several of their years. They are violent, short-lived, and remarkably fragile. Their bodies are soft. They require constant supplies of water and food. They cannot survive in the vacuum of space without elaborate protective equipment. In short, they are perfect candidates for client species status. The term client species was a polite way of describing what the Concord truly did. When they found a world with useful resources or interesting biological specimens, they would absorb it into their empire. The native species would serve the Concord's needs. Their planet would be stripped of anything valuable. Their people would become workers, test subjects, or simply entertainment for their new masters. It had happened hundreds of times before. The Concord was ancient and powerful, and no primitive species had ever successfully resisted absorption. High Chancellor Morvith, a being of shifting shadows and pale light, spoke from his position of authority. What does this world offer us? Why should we spend resources on such a distant conquest? Cuthvorin had prepared for this question. The planet is rich in water and minerals. Their star provides excellent energy. But more importantly, their biology is fascinating. They are carbon-based endurance hunters who evolved on a world filled with deadly predators and harsh conditions. Our scientists believe their biochemistry could provide valuable research opportunities. The Vrix have already expressed interest in studying their nervous systems. The Vrix delegation clicked their approval. Additionally, Cuthvorin added, their location makes them strategically valuable. Earth sits at a junction of three major hyperspace routes. Whoever controls that world controls access to an entire sector of the galaxy. This got the attention of every species in the chamber. Strategic value meant power, and power was the only thing the Concord truly respected. Chancellor Morvith nodded slowly. Very well. We shall vote. All those in favor of declaring Earth and its human inhabitants as a client species of the Galactic Concord indicate now. The holographic tally began to rise. One by one, every species voted in favor. The Sithrani voted first, eager to claim the glory of discovery. The Vrix followed, hungry for human specimens. The Cassari wanted Earth's vast oceans. The Morith desired its mineral wealth. The Thesan, the Corvon, the Drell, and 40 more species all added their approval. The final count appeared in glowing symbols. Above the chamber, 47-4. 0 against. The vote is unanimous, Chancellor Morvith declared. Earth shall be absorbed into the Concord. Ambassador Cuthvorin, your hegemony discovered this world. Do you wish to lead the conquest fleet? Cuthvorin bowed deeply. It would be my honor, Chancellor. I will personally oversee the subjugation of humanity. I expect it will take no more than a few of their weeks. More laughter filled the chamber. The representatives began discussing how they would divide Earth's resources among themselves. They argued over who would get the best territories, the most valuable specimens, the richest deposits of minerals. They treated humanity as if the conquest had already happened, as if these primitive creatures had no say in their own fate. None of them noticed the small probe drifting in the shadows outside the chamber. None of them realized that humans had been listening to Concord transmissions for nearly 40 years. None of them understood that everything they said was being recorded, translated and transmitted back to Earth, deep beneath the Swiss Alps. In a facility that officially did not exist, General Alina Vasquez watched the vote happen in real time. She was a small woman with gray hair and cold eyes, and she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Around her stood the most powerful military leaders on Earth, representatives from every major nation, all united by a common purpose. "There it is," she said quietly as the final vote was cast. "Unanimous. Every single species in their Concord just voted to enslave humanity." General Chen of China shook his head slowly. "They have no idea we can hear them. They think we are primitives." "That is exactly what we want them to think," Vasquez replied. "For 40 years, we have intercepted their signals. We have learned their languages. We have studied their biology, their psychology, their military tactics. We know more about them than they know about themselves, and they have no idea." Admiral Okonkwo of the African Coalition studied the tactical displays, showing alien fleet movements. "The Sithrani will come first." Their ambassador seemed eager. He was ambitious, Vasquez agreed. He wants glory. He wants to prove his species is worthy of leading the Concord. He will bring a large fleet to make a show of force. And that is exactly what we are counting on. She turned to face her fellow commanders. These were people who had spent their lives competing against each other, representing nations that had fought wars and nursed ancient grudges. But today, none of that mattered. Today, they were simply human. "They think this will be easy," Vasquez said. "They think we will bow down and accept our fate. They think we are like every other primitive species they have conquered." She paused, and something cold and dangerous entered her voice. "Let them come. Let them land on our world. Let them believe they have already won." She activated a display showing the preparations humanity had made. Underground bunkers spread across every continent. Weapons designed specifically for alien biology. Viruses engineered to target specific species. Psychological profiles of every member of the Concord. Contingency plans for every possible scenario. When they arrive, Vasquez continued, they will discover the truth about humanity. We are not primitive. We are patient. We are adaptable. We are the descendants of creatures who hunted their prey by simply refusing to stop following them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day, and we conquered it. We have been preparing for first contact since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. And it was not a pleasant expression. They voted to dominate Earth, every single one of them. Now, they will learn what that decision truly costs. Far away, at the edge of the solar system, the first Sithrani scout ships emerged from hyperspace. They detected no resistance, no advanced weapons, no planetary shields. They saw only a quiet blue world orbiting peacefully around its sun. They reported back to Commander Kethvorin. The humans had no idea they were coming. The conquest would be simple. They could not have been more wrong. The Sithrani. Domination fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of silver predators. 200 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation above Earth, their weapons charged and their crews confident. Commander Kethvorin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and looked down at the blue planet that would soon belong to his people. "Begin the subjugation broadcast," he ordered. "Let the humans know their new masters have arrived." The message went out on every frequency in every human language the Sithrani had learned from their observation. It was a simple message, one they had delivered to hundreds of primitive worlds before. Surrender peacefully, and casualties would be minimized. Resist, and entire cities would be turned to ash. As examples for the survivors, Earth responded with silence. Kethvorin waited for an hour. Then two. Still nothing came from the planet below. No surrender, no defiance, no attempt at communication at all. His officers exchanged confused glances. They are paralyzed with fear, Kethvorin decided. Their primitive minds cannot process what is happening. Begin landing operations. We will take their major population centers and establish control before they can organize any. Response: thousands of Sithrani soldiers loaded into dropships and descended toward Earth. They targeted the largest cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, Mumbai, London, and dozens more. The invasion had begun. The first reports were exactly what Kethvorin expected. Humans fled in terror at the sight of the alien soldiers. Human military units engaged, but their weapons barely scratched Sithrani armor. Tanks were destroyed by single plasma blasts. Aircraft fell from the sky. Human soldiers died by the hundreds, while Sithrani casualties numbered in single digits. Kethvorin began composing his victory message to the Galactic Concord. He imagined the praise he would receive, the elevation in status for his species. The Sithrani would be remembered as the ones who conquered humanity. His name would be spoken with respect for generations. Then the reports began to change. It started small. A squad that entered a building in New York and never reported back. A supply convoy outside Beijing that simply vanished. Soldiers in Moscow who started dying with no visible cause, collapsing in the streets with foam on their lips and terror in their eyes. "What is happening down there?" Kethvorin demanded. His ground commander's voice came through the communication system, but it was shaking with confusion and fear. "Commander, something is wrong. Our soldiers are dying, but not from human weapons. They are getting sick. They are being poisoned. The water, the air, the food, it is all contaminated with something our bodies cannot process." Kethvorin felt a cold sensation spread through his chest. "Explain." "The humans have poisoned their own cities, Commander. They have released chemicals and biological agents into everything. These substances do not harm humans, but they are deadly to us. Every street, every building, every water source is a trap. We walk into their cities and we simply start dying." This made no sense. What kind of species would poison their own world to stop an invasion? What kind of creatures would turn their homes into weapons? The answer came from his science officer, and it made Kethvorin's blood turn cold. "Commander, I have analyzed the biological agents. They are specifically designed to target Sithrani physiology. They attack our respiratory systems, our nervous systems, our digestive processes. These are not random poisons. Someone studied our biology in detail and created weapons that only kill us." "That is impossible," Kethvorin protested. "We have never had contact with humans before. How could they know our biology?" The science officer's voice was barely a whisper. "They have been listening to our transmissions, Commander, for decades. They intercepted our communications, learned our languages, studied every piece of biological data we ever broadcast. They knew we were coming. They knew the Sithrani would be first, and they prepared." Kethvorin stood in stunned silence as the truth settled over him. This was not a primitive species caught by surprise. This was a trap, and he had walked his entire fleet directly into it. The situation on the ground continued to deteriorate. Sithrani soldiers who survived the poisons found themselves hunted by enemies they never saw. Humans attacked from shadows, from underground tunnels, from hidden positions in buildings. They struck and vanished before the Sithrani could respond. They used weapons that made no sense. Explosives attached to vehicles that rammed into Sithrani positions. Soldiers who allowed themselves to be captured, only to detonate hidden bombs. Entire buildings rigged to collapse on advancing troops. The humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting an extermination. And they were terrifyingly good at it. Pull back. Kethvorin finally ordered. "All ground forces, return to the ships immediately. We will bombard them from orbit. We will turn their cities to glass and start over with whatever survivors remain." But as his soldiers scrambled to retreat, a new message arrived on his personal communication channel. It was from a human, a woman with gray hair and cold eyes who spoke in perfectly accented Sithrani. "Commander Kethvorin," General Alina Vasquez said, her image appearing on his screen. "I want you to understand something. You voted to dominate us. That was your first mistake. Landing on our world was your second mistake. Would you like to know your third?" Kethvorin stared at the human in shock. How did she know his name? How could she broadcast directly to his personal channel? Before he could respond, the screen split into multiple views. He saw his own flagship from the outside. He saw the engine room. He saw Sithrani guards lying dead on the floor. And he saw human soldiers, dozens of them, standing in the heart of his most protected ship. "Your third mistake," Vasquez continued, "was thinking we could not reach you." One of the humans held up a device, clearly a bomb of some kind. The power readings suggested it was nuclear. "Your soldiers came to Earth expecting primitives," Vasquez said. "They found something else. We spent 40 years preparing for this moment. We built ships capable of silent approach. We trained soldiers who could infiltrate any vessel. And we studied you, Commander. We studied all of you," Kethvorin found his voice. "If you destroy this ship, you destroy yourselves as well. My fleet will turn your planet to ash. Will they?" Vasquez smiled. "Check your other ships, Commander. Check all of them." With growing horror, Kethvorin opened communication channels to his fleet. Ship after ship reported the same thing. Human infiltrators had boarded during the chaos of the ground invasion. They had killed guards silently. They had planted bombs in critical systems. Nearly half of his 200 ships had human soldiers aboard, holding nuclear weapons in the hearts of engines and reactors. "You have a choice," Vasquez said. "You can fight, and we will destroy your fleet and take the survivors as our prisoners. Or you can surrender, and we will allow your remaining ships to leave. We will even return your soldiers who survived the poisons once they have been treated. But you will leave our system and you will deliver a message to your Concord." "What message?" Kethvorin asked, his voice hollow. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not a client species. Tell them that we are not primitives to be conquered. And tell them that the next fleet that comes to Earth will not receive the same mercy we are offering you today." Kethvorin looked at his tactical displays. His ground forces were being slaughtered. His ships were compromised. His soldiers were dying from poisons specifically designed to kill them. He had walked into a trap so perfectly constructed that he never even saw it closing. He was one of the finest military commanders in the Sithrani hegemony, and he had been utterly defeated by a species that had never even left their own planet. "I accept your terms," he said quietly. 40 ships limped back to Concord space. 160 remained behind, captured by humans who had somehow turned their own world into a weapon. Commander Kethvorin survived. But he was forever changed by what he had witnessed. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Concord, his report was met with shocked silence. The species who had laughed at humanity now stared at the images of destroyed ships and dead soldiers. They had expected easy conquest. Instead, they had received a warning, but they were not ready to accept what it meant. "Not yet. The Sithrani were overconfident," declared the Cassari delegate. "They underestimated the enemy. We will not make the same mistake. Our species evolved in the deep oceans. We will attack from the seas where humans cannot survive. They cannot poison water they do not control." The Concord voted again. This time, the Cassari would lead the invasion. On Earth, General Vasquez watched the transmission and smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan, the Cassari. Invasion fleet descended into Earth's oceans with absolute confidence. They were creatures born in the crushing depths of their homeworld seas. Massive reptilian beings with scales harder than steel and lungs that could extract oxygen from water. They had conquered dozens of aquatic worlds, and they believed Earth's oceans would be no different. Admiral Theska commanded the invasion from her flagship, a vessel designed to operate in the deepest trenches. Around her, 500 Cassari warships spread across every ocean on the planet. They established bases on the ocean floor, beyond the reach of human weapons. They sent soldiers into the water columns to claim the seas as Cassari territory. The first week went well. Human navies were destroyed whenever they ventured into deep water. Coastal cities were bombarded from the waves. The Cassari seemed unstoppable, and Admiral Theska prepared to report her success to the Concorde. Then the humans struck back. It started with depth charges, but not ordinary ones. These explosives were designed specifically for Cassari physiology, creating pressure waves at frequencies that ruptured their internal organs while leaving human submarines undamaged. Cassari soldiers died in their thousands, crushed from the inside by weapons they could not see coming. Then came the submarines. Human vessels that ran completely silent, appearing from nowhere to launch torpedoes and vanishing before the Cassari could respond. The humans had studied Cassari sonar systems and created countermeasures that made their ships invisible to detection. But the worst attacks came from the water itself. The humans released targeted toxins into the currents, chemicals that passed harmlessly through fish and marine life, but attacked Cassari nervous systems. Soldiers went mad, turning on each other, or simply swimming into the crushing depths until their bodies gave out. Officers lost the ability to think clearly, making terrible decisions that cost ships and lives. Admiral Theska watched her invasion crumble. She had lost half her fleet in just 3 weeks, and she still had not established a single permanent base on Earth. Then the humans captured some of her soldiers, and things became truly terrifying. The captured Cassari were returned after a few days. They seemed healthy, even grateful to be back with their own kind. Admiral Theska welcomed them back to duty without suspicion. 1 week later, every Cassari who had contact with the returned prisoners began showing symptoms: fever, confusion, organ failure. The humans had infected the prisoners with a synthetic virus, disease that spread only through Cassari biology and killed within days. The infection spread through the fleet like wildfire. Ships that had been at full strength became floating hospitals, then floating morgues. Admiral Theska herself contracted the virus, and in her final hours, she transmitted a warning to the Concorde. "They are not what we thought," she gasped, her scales turning gray as the virus consumed her. "They do not fight like civilized species. They turn everything into a weapon. Their own bodies, their own prisoners, their own world. Do not send more forces. Do not engage them. They are something we have never encountered before." The Concorde received her warning, but they also received something else. Humanity had captured Cassari communication technology and reverse-engineered it. Now they began broadcasting directly to Concorde space. And what they sent was more terrifying than any weapon. They sent their history documentary footage, played across Concorde screens, translated into every alien language. Humans showed what they had done to the predators of their own world. Lions, tigers, wolves, sharks, and thousands of other species that had threatened humanity now existed only in captivity or in extinction. Humans had hunted them, trapped them, poisoned them, wiped them from existence with casual efficiency. They showed their wars against each other. Millions dead in conflicts over territory, resources, and ideas. Cities destroyed by nuclear fire. Chemical weapons unleashed on civilian populations. Humans killing humans with creativity and determination that shocked even the most warlike species in the Concorde. They showed what they did to their own planet. Forests burned, species exterminated, oceans polluted, atmosphere damaged. Humans exploited and destroyed their world with a casual indifference that the Concorde had never seen in any species. The message was clear, and General Vasquez delivered it personally in a broadcast to the entire Concorde. "You see what we do to a world we love," she said, standing before images of Earth's beauty and destruction. "Imagine what we will do to yours. You voted to dominate us, all 47 of your species. You treated us like primitive animals to be conquered and used. Now you are learning the truth." She leaned toward the camera, her cold eyes seeming to stare directly at every alien watching. "We are the most successful predators our world ever produced. We hunted species to extinction for sport. We killed each other by the millions over disagreements about invisible gods. We poisoned our own air and water because it was convenient. And when you came to take our planet from us, we did not panic. We did not surrender. We prepared and we waited, and we destroyed everything you sent against us." The footage behind her changed, showing the shattered remains of Scythrony and Cassari fleets. "Two of your species have tried to have failed. The Scythrony are broken, their military reputation destroyed. The Cassari are dying from a disease we created in months that your scientists cannot cure in years. And we are just getting started," she smiled, and across the galaxy. Hundreds of billions of aliens felt something they had never experienced before when thinking about primitive species. They felt fear. "You have a choice," Vasquez continued. "You can accept that Earth is not yours to take. You can leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. Or you can keep sending fleets, and we will keep destroying them. We will capture your technology and learn your secrets. We will create weapons specifically designed to kill each of your species. And eventually, we will build ships of our own and come for you." She paused to let the weight of her words settle. "Right now, we cannot reach your worlds, but we are fast learners. The Scythrony gave us hyperspace communications. The Cassari gave us underwater propulsion systems beyond anything we had imagined. Every species that attacks us teaches us something new. Every fleet you send makes us stronger." The broadcast ended with a final image: human shipyards working day and night, building vessels that combined alien technology with human engineering, ships that would eventually carry humanity to the stars. The Concorde was thrown into chaos. Species blamed each other for the failure. The Scythrony were mocked for their overconfidence. The Cassari were abandoned to their plague, quarantined in their own space to prevent the human virus from spreading. But fear turned to anger, and anger turned to determination. The Concorde had not survived for millennia by accepting defeat from primitive worlds. In emergency session, the remaining 45 species agreed to a final solution. They would not invade Earth. Invasion had failed twice. Instead, they would simply destroy it. Every fleet, every weapon, every ship would gather for a single overwhelming assault. Orbital bombardment would continue until nothing on the planet survived. The humans would be exterminated, and their dangerous potential would be eliminated forever. 3,000 warships began massing at the edge of the solar system. The largest fleet in Concorde history, representing the combined military might of 45 spacefaring species on Earth. General Vasquez watched the fleet assemble. Her officers looked worried, but she seemed almost pleased. "Now," she said quietly, "the real game begins." She opened a communication channel to the human ships hiding throughout the solar system. Ships that the Concorde could not detect, using stealth technology perfected over 40 years of preparation. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. "It is time to remind them why they should never have united against us." The fleet that threatened Earth was the largest ever assembled. It was also 45 different species who had spent centuries competing, betraying, and despising each other. All they needed was a little reminder of who their real enemies were. The combined fleet of the Galactic Concorde hung in space like a wall of steel and fire. 3,000 warships from 45 species, the greatest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Their mission was simple: reduce Earth to a burning rock and ensure that humanity never threatened the Concorde again. High Chancellor Morvith commanded the operation from his flagship at the center of the formation. Around him, representatives from every participating species waited for the order to begin the bombardment. There would be no invasion this time, no ground forces to be trapped and destroyed. Just an endless rain of fire until nothing on the planet below could survive. "All ships report ready," the communications officer announced. "We can begin the assault on your command, Chancellor." Morveth looked at the blue world on his display. Such a small planet, home to such a dangerous species. He almost admired the humans for what they had accomplished. Almost. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Leave nothing alive." But before the first weapon could fire, alarms began screaming across the fleet. "Chancellor, we are receiving priority transmissions from multiple species delegations. They are demanding immediate communication." Morveth frowned. "Put them through." His screen split into dozens of windows, each showing a furious alien face. The Vrix delegate was clicking with rage. The Moreth representative pulsed with angry light. The Thesan ambassador was practically vibrating with accusation. The Moreth have betrayed us. The Vrix delegate screamed. We have intercepted communications proving they plan to claim Earth's minerals for themselves after the bombardment. Lies, the Morath representative flashed. The Vrix are the traitors. They have made secret deals with the humans to preserve biological specimens for their own research. Both of you are fools, the Thesan ambassador interrupted. We have evidence that the Corvin have been selling information to human agents for months. Within minutes, the unified fleet had descended into chaos. Species accused each other of treachery, of secret deals, of ancient grudges that had nothing to do with humanity. Ships that had been pointing their weapons at Earth began turning to face each other. Morveth tried to restore order. Silence. These accusations are clearly human manipulation. They are trying to divide us. Then explain this. The Vrix delegate transmitted a data packet to the entire fleet. It contained detailed communication logs showing Morith officers discussing how to betray their allies after Earth was destroyed. The logs looked completely authentic. The Morith immediately transmitted their own evidence. Recordings of Vrix scientists planning to capture human specimens while the bombardment distracted everyone else. These two looked completely genuine, because they were genuine. Human intelligence agents had spent months gathering real communications between Concord species, finding every secret deal, every whispered betrayal, every old grudge that still festered beneath the surface of Alliance. The Concord had never truly been united. It was a collection of rivals forced together by mutual benefit, and every species was constantly scheming against the others. The humans had simply made sure. Everyone found out about it at the same time. More transmissions flooded the fleet. The Drell discovered that the Thesan had been secretly mining in Drell territory. The Corvin learned that the Cassari had sabotaged their colony ships decades ago. Species that had pretended friendship revealed centuries of hidden hostility. This is human manipulation, Morvith shouted. Can you not see what they are doing? But it was too late. The first shots were fired not at Earth, but between Concord vessels. A Vrix cruiser opened fire on a Morith dreadnought. The Morith retaliated by destroying 3 Thesan frigates they suspected of conspiracy. The Thesan struck back at everyone within range. Within an hour, the greatest fleet in galactic history was tearing itself apart. On Earth, General Vasquez watched the destruction with quiet satisfaction. Her psychological warfare teams had worked for years on this moment, studying every species in the Concord, learning their fears and hatreds and secret shames. They had planted fake evidence alongside real evidence, created confusion and paranoia, and triggered a chain reaction that no amount of leadership could stop. They never trusted each other, she said to her officers. The Concord was always a lie, a temporary alliance held together by shared greed. We simply reminded them of who they really are. The battle in orbit continued for 3 days. Ships designed to destroy Earth instead destroyed each other. Ancient rivalries exploded into open warfare. Species that had cooperated for centuries became bitter enemies in hours. When the firing finally stopped, more than half the fleet was destroyed. The survivors limped away in different directions, heading back to their own territories to prepare for wars against their former allies. The Concord, which had ruled the galaxy for millennia, was shattered beyond repair, and humanity had not fired a single shot. But Vasquez knew this was only the beginning. The Concord was broken, but the individual species were still powerful. They would eventually stop fighting each other and remember that humanity was the real threat, unless humanity acted first. Launch the fleet, she ordered. From hidden bases across the solar system, human ships emerged. They were small compared to alien vessels, and there were only a few hundred of them. But they were built with stolen technology, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment, and commanded by officers who understood that humanity's survival depended on what happened next. The human fleet did not attack the fleeing. Instead, they followed at a distance, watching and waiting. When damaged ships fell behind, human vessels approached with offers of assistance. When escape pods drifted in space, humans rescued the survivors. The aliens expected execution or experimentation. Instead, they received medical treatment, food, and comfortable quarters. Human doctors cured Cassery of the plague that had devastated their fleet. Human engineers repaired Cithrone's ships that would have been lost. Human diplomats spoke to prisoners not as enemies, but as potential allies. We did not want this war. Human representatives explained to confused alien captives. Your Concord gave us no choice, but we are not monsters. We do not wish to destroy you. We wish to live alongside you as equals, not as slaves or masters. Some aliens rejected these words as lies, but others listened. They had seen what humanity could do when threatened. They had witnessed humans defeat two invasion fleets with biological warfare and destroy a third without weapons at all. They had watched the unbeatable Concord tear itself apart because humans understood their psychology better than they understood themselves. If humanity wanted them dead, they would be dead. The fact that they were alive meant something. Commander Kethvorin, the Cithrani officer who had led the first invasion, was among those who listened. He had been captured during the destruction of his fleet and held prisoner on Earth for months. During that time, he had learned things about humanity that changed his understanding of the universe. You could have killed us all, he said to General Vasquez during one of their conversations. You had biological weapons that could have wiped out every species in the Concord. Why did you not use them? Vasquez considered the question carefully. Because that would have made us exactly what you feared. We do not want to rule the galaxy through terror. We want to survive, and we want to be left alone. Destroying the Concord would have created a power vacuum that would have led to endless wars. Breaking it into pieces that can eventually become our allies serves our interests better. Kethvorin studied her with his 4 eyes. You planned this from the beginning. Not just the defense, but everything after. The fall of the Concord, the rescue of survivors, building relationships with former enemies. We had 40 years to plan, Vasquez replied. We knew we could not defeat the entire galaxy through force. So we found another way, and now. Vasquez smiled, but there was no cruelty in it. Now we build something new. A galaxy where humanity has a place, where species can trade and cooperate without one group dominating all the others. It will take time, and there will be more conflicts. But we have proven that humanity cannot be conquered. Now we need to prove that we can be trusted. She extended her hand to him. A human gesture of peace. After a long moment, Kethvorin took it. Across the shattered territories of the former Concord, similar scenes played out. Human ships brought aid instead of destruction. Human diplomats spoke of cooperation instead of subjugation. Species that had voted unanimously to enslave humanity now found themselves receiving help from the very creatures they had tried to destroy. It was not forgiveness. Humanity never forgot what the Concord had intended. But it was something that confused and amazed the aliens who experienced it. It was mercy, offered from a position of absolute strength, and it was the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Concord. The galaxy was a different place now, reshaped by the actions of a species that had never been expected to survive first contact with the stars. Human ships patrolled the former Concord territories. But they did not patrol as conquerors. They served as peacekeepers, mediators, and protectors. Species that had once voted to enslave humanity now paid for human protection against the chaos that followed the Concord's collapse. They paid not because they were forced to, but because human protection was actually worth the price. The Scythrani hegemony had become humanity's closest ally. Commander Kethvorin, once a proud military leader who had expected to conquer Earth in weeks, now served as ambassador to the new human coalition. He had spent years learning human ways, and what he had discovered had changed everything he believed about the universe. On this particular day, he walked through the corridors of the new coalition headquarters on a space station orbiting Earth. Human and alien officers worked side by side at their stations. Sithrani Morath, Thesan, and a dozen other species that had once been enemies now cooperated on joint projects. It was not perfect harmony. There were still conflicts, still old grudges that surfaced from time to time. But it was working. Cathforan found General Alina Vasquez in her office, looking out at the stars. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She had retired from military command and now served as humanity's senior diplomat, the face of the species to the rest of the galaxy. "You asked to see me?" "Ambassador," she said without turning around. "I have been thinking about a question that has troubled me for years," Cathforan replied. "May I ask it now?" Vasquez turned and smiled. "After everything we have been through, you can ask me anything." Cathforan gathered his thoughts. This was a question he had asked before, in simpler forms. But now he wanted the complete answer. "When we invaded Earth, you had biological weapons that could have destroyed every species in the Concord. You had proven that you could infiltrate any ship, poison any water, turn any strength into weakness. You could have killed billions and ensured that no alien would ever threaten humanity again." He paused. "Why did you not?" Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "When we first intercepted Concord transmissions, 40 years before your invasion, we had a choice. We could have used that time to build ships and try to reach the stars before you found us. We could have hidden, hoping you would never notice our world. Or we could prepare for the war we knew was coming." She sat down and gestured for Cathforan to join her. "But even as we prepared for war, we thought about what would come after. If we destroyed everyone who attacked us, we would become the most hated species in the galaxy. Every survivor would dedicate themselves to revenge. We would be fighting forever, against everyone, until one side or the other was completely exterminated." "That is the logical outcome," Cathforan agreed. "It is how the Concord would have responded." "Exactly. And we did not want to become like the Concord. We had a chance to build something different, something better." Vasquez leaned forward. "We could have been monsters. We had every right, every reason. You voted unanimously to enslave our entire species. You treated us like animals, but revenge was not the point. Survival was, and the best way to survive is not to destroy everyone who threatens you. It is to make sure no one ever wants to threaten you again." Cathforan considered this. "You showed us that you could destroy us, and then you showed us mercy. You made us fear humanity, and then you made us grateful to humanity. More than that," Vasquez said, "we showed you that we were worthy of respect. Not because we were powerful, though we proved that, but because we were more than our power. We could have taken everything, and we chose to give instead. That is something the Concord never did. That is why species that hated us 5 years ago now ask for our help." She stood and walked back to the window. "There is an old human saying, 'The best revenge is living well.' We could have spent eternity fighting the species that wronged us. Instead, we built a coalition where former enemies become allies. We created trade relationships that benefit everyone. We established laws that protect the weak from the strong. We became the center of the galaxy, not through force, but through the example of what we chose to do with our force." "And you believe this is sustainable?" Cathforan asked. "Eventually, some species will try to take advantage of your mercy. They will see it as weakness." Vasquez smiled coldly. "They are welcome to try. We have not forgotten how to fight. The weapons are still there. The strategies are still in place. Every species in this coalition knows exactly what we are capable of. That knowledge keeps them honest." She turned to face him. "Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is what the strong offer to the defeated. It takes no strength to destroy. Any child can break things. It takes true power to choose restraint. And everyone who deals with humanity knows that our restraint is a choice, not a limitation." An alarm chimed softly. Vasquez checked the display, and her expression became serious. "Speaking of which, we have a situation. A new species has been discovered at the edge of explored space. They call themselves the Vorthan, and they are not interested in peaceful contact. They have already destroyed 3 research stations and killed hundreds of researchers. The Coalition Council is meeting to discuss our response." Kethvorin followed her to the council chamber, where representatives from dozens of species were already assembled. On the main screen, footage played of Vorthon warships tearing through civilian vessels. They were aggressive, powerful, and completely uninterested in negotiation. A Vorthon transmission played for the council. A massive creature with armored plates and burning eyes filled the screen, speaking in harsh tones that the translation system struggled to process. "We are the Vorthon Dominion. We have conquered 60 worlds. We will add yours to our empire. Surrender immediately or face extermination. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Bow before us or die." The council erupted in worried conversation. The Vorthon were unknown, their capabilities uncertain, but their aggression was clear. General Vasquez raised her hand for silence, then walked to the communication console. She activated a direct response channel, and her image was transmitted back to the Vorthon fleet. "I am Elena Vasquez, representing the Human Coalition and its allied species. I want to tell you a story." The Vorthon commander made a sound of contempt. "We do not listen to stories. We take what we want." "Should listen to this one," Vasquez replied calmly. 5 years ago, 47 species united to conquer humanity. They brought their greatest fleets. They launched their best soldiers. They were confident they would crush us in weeks.
Else.
She paused, letting the weight of her words build. The first fleet that came, the Sithrani, was destroyed by biological weapons designed specifically for their physiology. We poisoned our own cities to kill them. We infiltrated their ships and held nuclear weapons in their engine rooms. 40 ships limped home from an invasion force of 200. The Vorthon commander's expression shifted slightly. Around the council chamber, former enemies nodded, remembering. The second fleet, the Cassari, attacked our oceans. We created a disease that killed every soldier who set foot in our water. Their admiral died choking on her own blood while transmitting a warning that no one listened to. Vasquez stepped closer to the camera. The third attack was the entire Concord combined. 3,000 warships. The greatest force in galactic history? We destroyed them without firing a single shot. We turned them against each other, broke their alliance into pieces, and watched them tear themselves apart while we sat safely on our world. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Every species that voted to dominate Earth learned to beg for the mercy we did not owe them. And we gave them that mercy because we chose to. Now those species are our allies. They serve beside us. They trade with us. They prosper because we allowed them to live. The Vorthon commander was no longer making sounds of contempt. He was listening. "You have 2 choices," Vasquez continued. "You can attack us, and you will learn the same lessons they learned. We will study your biology, your psychology, your weaknesses. We will create weapons specifically designed to destroy you. And when we are finished, you will beg for the mercy that we may or may not grant." She leaned forward, her cold eyes seeming to look directly at every Vorthon, watching the transmission. "Or you can talk to us. You can trade with us. You can become part of something greater than conquest and domination. You can learn what every species in this coalition has learned, that humanity is better as a friend than as an enemy." The council chamber was completely silent. Every representative watched the screen, waiting for the Vorthon response. The massive alien stared at Vasquez for a long moment. Then, slowly he spoke. "We will... talk." Vasquez nodded. "That is a wise choice. Welcome to the coalition. We have much to discuss." As the communication ended and the council began planning for diplomatic contact, Kethvorin approached Vasquez. "You terrified them," he said quietly. "With nothing but words and history." Vasquez shrugged. "Fear is a useful tool, but it is not the goal. The goal is peace. The goal is a galaxy where species cooperate instead of dominate. Every time a new threat appears, we have 2 paths, destruction or integration. Destruction is easier in the short term. Integration is better for everyone in the long term." She looked out at the assembled representatives, former enemies now working together toward common goals. Every species in this room once voted to enslave humanity. Now they are our partners. That transformation happened because we chose mercy when we could have chosen revenge. That choice was our greatest weapon. And as long as humanity exists, we will keep making that choice. Keth Voren nodded slowly. He had served the Concord for most of his life, believing that power meant domination and mercy meant weakness. The humans had taught him otherwise. They had taught the entire galaxy otherwise, and that lesson would echo through the stars for generations to come.